There you are. Oh, we got several cameras going. Good morning. This is the Walnut Grove Baptist Church 11 o'clock service. There are three of us here. Danny Bain is here to bring us some music in just a little while. Andy Crow is our producer. Andy is going to be streaming the broadcast from his Facebook page as well this morning. So we appreciate him doing that. We're trying to, and I never did get to a place where I posted the camera version, the digital camera version of last Sunday service, but we had the last I looked, 115 different people who passed through that neighborhood and watched pieces and parts or all of our last Sunday's broadcast. And we see more and more churches are broadcasting. I believe Andy said a few minutes ago that Hopewell, Thomas, Ashley, Urban, their church out there is broadcasting this morning. So that's just excellent. It's good to hear. I'm glad that we had, I feel particularly blessed that this is a technology that we had looked into and had taken advantage of a long time ago, and so we've worked out some of the bugs, but we even ironed a few things out since last week. The pepper and water lamb service last Sunday went south, but actually I was telling them this morning, Andy and Danny, that the reason that trick didn't work the first time because there was too much pepper in there, and that's kind of why we're not meeting for church. If there's too many of us, it don't work. So I don't know. I've done my best. I don't know what all you have been doing this week or not doing, but I've certainly been praying for you, and I know you've been praying for us. We're broadcasting from, this is the senior adult Sunday school classroom, and at the beginning of the year, generally I've been spending this time to greet visitors or make sure everything's in place, work on a little bit extra on the lamb service. I have never used this time prior to the service to work on my sermon. If it's not done by Sunday morning, it's never going to get done. But beginning of this year, I began invading as a guest into this Sunday school classroom right here with the senior adult class. And they've made me feel welcome. Ned Stevenson is the teacher, and the Lord has blessed them with the ability. They have a daughter and grandkids that live out in Las Vegas, so they're worse than gamblers wanting to go to Las Vegas. They go out there to see those grandbabies. So when they have to be gone, or when Betsy has recently had some serious back surgery and they've had to be out, Henry Crow or others lead the class. I always do a wonderful job. I always enjoy the fellowship and the conversation. The lesson's always well prepared. I talked with Joanne Hunt yesterday. She called me. So I had called her, but she called me yesterday. And I think I had mentioned her in a one call or something about reading the Bible. And yesterday she was studying her lesson. The senior adult class in Alabama, we call them old people. And in the old people's class, they're studying the book of Romans. And so if you don't have a quarterly, as we used to call them, and I still do, if you don't have a Sunday school lesson book, I see that there's some right here that are left over, and I believe there's some. We always order more because we want to make sure that if anybody wants one, it doesn't matter if you're a senior adult or not. If you would like to have one of these, there's a lesson for every Sunday. There's a lesson for today. And I hope you're keeping up with those lessons. I hope you're continuing, because when we come back to church and Sunday school starts back again, we're not going to be able to cover all those lessons, except in perhaps a cursory fashion, but you'll need to be up to speed. Joanne said she was reading her Sunday school lesson yesterday, the book of Romans, so she said she does that every Saturday. So if you would like one of these, just let me know. Send me a text, phone me, call me, reach out any way that you can or do, and I will get one to you. I'll drive by and I'll throw it at the doorstep just like the paper boy used to do. So it is a study of the book of Romans during this quarter, and this is just an excellent, it's got your scripture in there, commentary, and good illustrations. It's just one of the best. I've used a lot of commentaries and a lot of study materials over my many years as a Christian and in the ministry, and the Lifeway literature for Sunday school lessons is the best I have ever seen. It's the best it's been in a very, very long time. There was a time we went through a phase when whoever was working in Nashville would ask liberal college and seminary professors to prepare the lesson. They don't do that anymore. So very conservative, very sound biblical teaching, and if you want one, please just let me know. I'll even mail it to you or get it to you some way or another. Well, I made several calls yesterday, and I called and talked to Doug Stisher. Now, some of those folks who know and love Doug best know him as Louie. When he introduced himself to me for the first time, though, he said he called himself Doug. It's kind of like me and Dennis. I'm Dennis to some people who won't let it go. But I still call him Doug because that's the way he entered it. But it sounded like he was having fun, and so I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm out here on the river on the boat with my family." So I didn't make him mention who all was out there. Well, they were having a good time, and I felt like I was intruding, but I just said, "I'm just calling to see how you doing." And he said, "The playground business has gone down the drain," so he hadn't been selling much playground equipment since this coronavirus got carried on.
Donna Serta says you can put one of those in her mailbox.
All right. I think I got your address, Donna. I'll do that, or I'll drive it by and throw it at you. All right. Don't let me forget, though. I'll look at these messages later on, Donna. So we've got several people who are tuned in. One thing that we have not been able to do, because we don't monitor it during the previous services when we've been using it for a long time, is to respond to all of your waves and so your comments, and so many people chime in. That's an extra special blessing right now. I can see people pop up. Let me get a little bit closer. Well, there's Bailey Dotson. Bailey's going to be graduating this year, and her senior year it's gone. But I'm interested in seeing how she feels about that. I don't know if I was a senior and said, you know, we hate to tell you this, but you're going to graduate and you're not going to have to come to school anymore. So I don't know how that's going. But anyway, I was talking to Doug. And, well, I said, well, just stay away from everybody. Stay one end of the boat or the other. And then I made a few calls, and I remembered after letting him go that yesterday was his birthday. So we got a trio here. We're going to sing happy birthday. I don't know if Doug is watching this morning, but y'all can tell him, so I heard the awfulest happy birthday I ever heard in my life for you, Doug. So I think he said he was 40 years old. Here we go. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. God bless you. Happy birthday to you. Avery says, Mimi, why do they say God bless you in there instead of saying the person's name? So I never have been able to come up with a sufficient explanation for that. But God bless you, Doug. I hope you have it. Now, today is Nair Buell's birthday. I don't know how old she is. That's Brian's mother. And I don't know if she's watching, but you pray for Nair and Vic Buell. And they're new residents here in the Priceville area, and I have not yet seen their new home, but I know Danny has been out there a few times and done some work for them. But happy birthday, Nair, and God bless you. We love you. We love Vic and the Buell family. Well, no, Doug is not 40. He's much, much, much older than that. Well, I have mailed out a prayer warrior to all of you. And you should be getting it maybe tomorrow or Tuesday. But if you haven't been using the Prayer Warrior Guide, I digitized these, and they're also on Facebook. I sent it out. It is a part of the newsletter. And I emailed the newsletter and various other things, and I posted on our church group and our church page. We've had a number of people that I do not know who they are who have recently joined our Walnut Grove Baptist Church group and our page, and when they come in and said, I'd like to join, I've just been approving them all. So we have a lot of new people. They're probably people that you know, people that I'm acquainted with and have their name did not click with me. But I hope that you're praying for each other. I look through here. If your name is not on here and you want it to be on here, please let me know. There's the names of the people who attend our church. They're not all members, but members of our immediate family. Perhaps some of them do not even attend church anywhere, or they go to other churches. We have special requests for special needs. On the front, I've asked prayer for some, they're just people that we want to pray for and pray about. Our pastor, deacons, teachers, the minister of music, the musicians, the sound and media managers. children's church leaders, nursery workers, property caretakers. That's the folks who take care of the inside for our church, keep it so clean and orderly, and those who take care of our lawn and our grounds and so forth. We have a new road. Bethel Road has been paved. Well, it looks like the highway to heaven out there. And then they did those aprons on our that lead right into our park, our brand newly paved parking lot. So thanks to the county, state, or commissioners, politicians who did that. Boy, it's our tax money at work, and they're doing a good job. It's a beautiful road. I think they're probably going to paint it a little bit, stripe it, getting some new utility poles down through there. So, they're just taking this opportunity to continue to work. Evidently, they don't have to be any closer to each other than 6 feet. The prayer for medical personnel, law enforcement, and fire protection. EMTs, of course, the President of the United States, the First Lady, and their family members, all members of the U.S. Congress, our judicial system, and all officers of the courts, U.S. military veterans, and active duty servicemen and women. If you ever look in here and say, well, why don't we pray for this group or that group or these people? This is what I'm calling our quarantine edition, part 2. So if you haven't been using this, let me encourage you to write in the borders, make notes, make circles, underline things, put it in your Bible. So when you do your daily Bible reading, it's a good tool to use for praying and not forgetting anybody, not overlooking. I have a tendency to forget, so I use this. And if there's ever an update, or if I have something that's incorrect, then please let me know. But use your prayer warrior. I want us to have a word of prayer right now. I want to lead us in a prayer. But I want to say something before I do. I shared last Sunday that everything that the Lord has brought into my life since I've become a Christian has become a part of me. And so it's not just memories or fond memories, not even just nostalgia. It's not even just recalling the good old days. There are so many things. Everything that the Lord has done in my life has become a part of me. It's a part of me, and it's always there. And I can hear it and see it. I can smell it and taste it. I can relive it anytime that I need to. It's a part of my fellowship. It's a part of my worship. It is a part of me. We're going to talk a little bit more today about Elijah. And Elijah was asked by God. God told him to quarantine himself, go off somewhere all by yourself. You need to go to a solitary place and be all alone. Well, he could do that and keep his sanity, because I believe he had learned this as well, that I'm never alone, and my memories and my experiences and my walk with the Lord is so there. Now, I shared with you that even when we only went to church just every once in a while or once a year when I was a child at the Flint Baptist Church, we began attending in Vacation Bible School at the Flint Baptist Church when it was in the old building there on Mill Street in Flint. The pastor's home, the pastorium, was right across the street. And I remember we would have Vacation Bible School there in the old church. And they would get us to all hold hands or hold on to a rope. And we was just little fellows then. And they'd lead us across the road. And Miss Smallwood was in charge of, during Vacation Bible School, of the refreshments. And so they'd lead us across the street. It wasn't a busy street at all in those days. And every class would go over, and she had little tables set up in her backyard there at the church pastorium. And we had cookies and Kool-Aid every day, and it was 2 weeks long, Vacation Bible School. And but I remember there is when every Sunday we would sing, first of all, the very first song. We'd open our service, the choir would march in, and we would sing the doxology. We did that last week. The word doxology means words of glory. Words of glory. And we would sing, praise God from whom all blessings flow. And then a member of the choir had been selected to lead us in our first prayer. And then we had a little song that our choir director and our choir would lead us in singing after the prayer. And I want to sing that for you. I want to share something with you, though, that during that time, I remember Miss Margaret Howard was the church pianist. And we got to know Miss Howard later on because she was a substitute school teacher, and so she was often at Flint Elementary School, or Flint Middle School as it was when I first met her. Later she taught kindergarten there in Flint. But she was the church pianist, and the church choir director, or the church music director at that time, was Junior Hightower. I thought I might have some pictures of Junior, and I had to go to Connie, his daughter's Facebook page, to snipe an old photo of him, and had some pictures of Doris, her mother. But this is a picture I grabbed of Junior Hightower. It's his military photo. Junior, for many years, was the minister of music there at the Flint Baptist Church. And he would lead us in our music, and he was the best tenor singer. And he sang for the Missions Quartet, and just when he sang, I don't recall Junior ever singing what we would call a special. I don't. He may have, but as I said, we didn't attend church very often ourselves. But Junior was a wonderful person, probably one of the sweetest, most wonderful Christian men I've ever known. And I haven't. I don't know what's going on with Doris right now, but Doris has also been very special. Connie Hightower, and she's Benson now, and Danny Hightower. That family is also very special. They were there at the trailer park, and so many of our friends lived in the trailer park behind their house for so many years. But we would pray. So let me lead us in prayer. Father, thank you for these people whose names are on our prayer warrior list, and thank you for the privilege of having fellowship with wonderful people. Lead us to always be of mind and heart for all of these. Help us to be aware of their needs. And Father, even in this unusual time, if they need us, in spite of of all dangers, help us to know to come running and to be present and to be available. We ask you to bless the people who are on this list, the people for whom we're praying are undergoing various trials during this time and difficulties. We hold them up to you by name, and we thank you for the privilege of knowing everyone that you've brought into our life. Bring us into someone's life, perhaps someone who needs us, and someone to whom we can minister in your name. And we pray all this in Jesus' name. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Hear our prayer, O Lord. Incline thine ear to us, and grant us thy peace. Amen. You know, I've never known Baptists to do, or Protestants in general, to be much on ritual or repetitiveness, or even doing things on a repetitive nature. But I cherish those times. I don't know how many years Flint did that. I'm not aware if they still continue to do that, to sing the doxology, prayer by a choir member, as Brother Hightower led. Been other fine men who have led during the Bobby Berry led the music there. Bobby White, we used to lead us on Sunday nights on occasion. And so, but I remember, hear our prayer, O Lord. Well, one of our pastors who was there, a good friend to Danny and I, and a blessing to our family, was Brother John Hamilton, and he taught us a song. It's a little bit on a lighter note, and I guess I've been singing that. It's a little bit lighthearted, and perhaps a little bit more than it should be. But he taught us a song called "Cheer Up, Ye Saints of God." I don't know if you were at Flint during that time. As I said, there are many things that are keeping my heart and mind at attention these days. But he taught us how to sing the song in two different ways. It went like this. He said, "Cheer up, ye saints of God, there's nothing to worry about. Nothing to make you feel afraid, nothing to make you doubt. Remember that Jesus never fails, so why not trust him and shout? You'll be sorry you worried at all tomorrow morning." But he told us that he learned that at the Belmont Baptist Church there when he was attending college at Belmont College in Nashville. And the pastor taught the congregation that song, rather large metropolitan congregation there in the center of Nashville. And he said, actually, that's a Scottish song. Danny and I are from Scottish roots. And he said, actually, you should sing that song, "Cheer Up, Ye Saints of God," in the language of heaven. And he said, if you did, it would sound just like this. He would say, "Cheer up, ye saints of good, there's nothing to worry about. Nothing to make you feel afraid, nothing to make you doot. Remember that Jesus never fails, so why not trust him and shoot? You'll be sorry you were it all tomorrow morning. Well, just singing that just floods my heart and mind. You know, I hope that you're building memories, and that everything that the Lord pours into your life, every person you've met, every time you've seen God do something amazing or wonderful in your life or others, that it's become a part of you and it's something more than just a precious memory. Well, let me show you something. As I said, I've had a retake, or Andy helped me redo. In the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, is one of Jesus' most important sermons. It's called the Sermon on the Mount. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus had some of his most important teaching. And as he taught and as he talked, he looked at the disciples, the 12 disciples he selected, and he said, one of the things that he said was to them, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. You know, I have some salt right here, another one of those things that I borrowed from the house. Salt is sodium chloride. It's SOCl. That's its elemental description. Do you know that if you just ate pure sodium, or if you just ate chloride all by itself, chlorine, either one of those elements would kill you. It's poisonous. It's extremely toxic. But as God combines them to make salt, just ordinary table salt, it gives a lot of food in so many different ways flavor. There's hardly any food or meal that we would ever be a part of that didn't have salt in it in some way. And the doctors tell us that probably we shouldn't eat as much salt as we do, and probably foods even though that's what we're seeking as far as taste goes, we're looking for things that are salty. There are some, you know, I told someone I stopped at a Subway several years ago and I ordered a Subway sandwich, and then I said, there's some of those chips, those potato chips there that are, they're not fried, they're just oven baked, and they don't have any salt on them. You know what I found out? I don't like the way potatoes taste. And if a potato didn't chip or fry, if it didn't have grease on it or salt, I probably wouldn't eat it. Evidently, I'm just using the potato as a vehicle for salt and grease. Well, anyway, sodium chloride. I heard a comedian the other day said, you know, there's a big rage right now that you can go pay a lot of money, and a lot of gourmet people and people who enjoy cooking, someone like Brian, that enjoys different kinds of gourmet foods and cooking. I'm sure that probably in their pantry they have some sea salt. And this comedian said, you know what? All salt is sea salt. It's all, but you know, you can buy this pink salt, and they slice it off, and they said, you know, they found this underneath the ice, and this came from Antarctica, and it's 3 million years old, and I don't know how much they charge you for, probably 10, 15, 20 times more than this salt right here costs. But it's sea salt, and it is pink, and you know what it says on the bottom on the label? It says best if consumed before March 30th. So evidently that 3 million year old salt, well, it'll run out of date if you don't use it right up and get you some more. Maybe you might need to throw that out. But anyway, Jesus said, you're the salt of the earth. You're the salt of the earth. And even in these times when we're kind of quarantined and shut off and locked down, we can still be the flavor. There are ways that we can find out to give the world flavor. You know, Jesus said that if the salt has lost its savor, I'm going to put some salt right in there in my fist. Can you see that? Put some salt right in there, just like that. He says, but if the salt has lost its savor, he says, wherewith shall it be salted? He said, well, that's the King James Version way of saying, if salt is not salty, what good is it? But then, you know, one of the things, Addison received a microscope for Christmas, and I need to go over there sometime when we're not quarantined. I had a microscope when I was about her age, and I loved to look at everything I could find underneath the microscope. Salt was one of the things that I loved to look at, because if you look at salt under the microscope, they're all little bitty tiny cubes. They look like perfectly designed cubes. They're salt, sodium chloride. And you know, salt true salt, sodium chloride, never loses its savor. It never loses its flavor. It can't. You can wash it, you can burn it, you can mix it, you can just do it with, but that's what Jesus meant. He was talking about salt that loses its savor. Because everybody knew, and everybody even in his day before we knew anything about chemicals, that salt never actually loses its flavor. It doesn't lose its savor. You'll never put some salt in your mouth or on some food and say, you know, that salt's gone bad. It doesn't taste salty. That salt is not salty anymore. It just tastes like sand. I've never had that experience. I've never known it because it's an impossibility. Now, that looks like that salt went away, but actually, salt never actually loses its flavor. And it doesn't matter what happens to me or to you or what happens in our life. If Jesus is in our life, we're always going to be able to add flavor into the lives of those around us. And that's what Jesus was talking about. He was saying, you're going to be what make things taste good. That's his intention. And that's what he was challenging us to be and to do. The salt of the earth. Jesus said, you, my children, my followers, my disciples, you're the salt of the earth. Flavor, taste. Well, Danny Bain is here with us this morning. He's going to sing for us. And so, as I said, we're using a new technology. So I'm going to spin this around. Danny, I'm glad that you are here this morning. I appreciate you singing for us. I'm going to turn this around right now. What are you singing for us today?
Well, I'm singing a song that I think is very appropriate for what we're going through. So many times when we go through a hardship in our life, our first reaction is to ask God to get rid of it, deliver us from it, stop it. But so often we find out that he has something he wants us to learn from the situation. And that's what this song is telling us about. It says, sometimes he calms the storms, but other times he just calms his child. So listen prayerfully as I try. Sometimes he calms the storm. All who sail the sea of faith find out before too long. Quickly blue skies can grow dark, gentle winds grow strong. Suddenly fear like white water pounding on your soul. Still we sail on knowing that our Lord is in control. Sometimes he calms the storm with a whisper, peace, be still. He can settle any sea, but it doesn't mean he will. Sometimes he holds us close, lets the winds and waves go wild. Sometimes he calms the storm, other times he calms his child. He has a reason for each trial that we pass through life. Though we're shaken, we cannot be pulled apart from Christ. No matter how the driving rain beats down on those who hold the faith, a heart of trust will always be a quiet, peaceful place. Sometimes he calms the storm with a whisper, peace, be still. He can settle any sea, but it doesn't mean he will. Sometimes he holds us close, lets the wind and waves go wild. Sometimes he calms the storm, other times he calms his child. he comes the storm, with a peace be still. He can sail any sea, but it doesn't mean he will. Sometimes he holds us close, lest the winds and waves go wild. Sometimes he calms the storm, other times he calms his child. With a whisper, peace be still. He can sail any sea, but it doesn't mean he will. Sometimes he holds us close, lets the winds and waves go wild. Sometimes he calms the storm, other times he calms his child.
All right, thank you, Danny. Andy helped me get the salt all gathered up. Andy was telling me kind of what they have planned, I think, for dinner today. We've all been a little imaginative. We've been trying to support, as we could, takeout service throughout the county, trying to be helpful. Keeping up, trying to keep track. Got in touch with Evelyn Garrison. Evelyn is one of our members who, right now she's in Gulf Shores. I told her, no, don't tell Terry you're in Gulf Shores. Don't let her know. She might get mad. But this is stormy time, but it doesn't have to be a dark time. It doesn't have to be, you know, I just imagine that if you ask the disciples, say, well, tell us about something that happened with you and Jesus, they might want to say, we were in a boat one time. As a matter of fact, we were in a boat on several occasions, and a storm came up. You know, I think they probably got, and Jesus said, well, let's all get in the boat. And they said, really? Oh, do we have to? Could we walk? Let's go around. Because those were stormy times and scary times, and yet I believe that might be one of the stories that say, you know, that's a story I want to tell everybody, because that was a door knocker. One day, I believe we're going to be able to testify about what God did and how He touched and how He moved, and I can tell you, I see God's hand in all of this. I see what He's doing, and all that has to happen is put us into a situation that we're out of our comfort zone, or we feel like we don't have control, or if we feel like we're in a foreign territory or we're out of place. When we feel like that the wheel has come off, or that things are gone nuts, that's when God can do His greatest things. It's when we're out of the way, when we're saying, Lord, please help us, we're needing Him, and we generally we like to be people who say, well, I'll handle this. I can take care of this. I can do this, and I don't need anybody's help. But we realize we need people. And listen, this is not a time when things have gotten loose and fallen apart. I like a saying that I have heard. I heard Dr. Adrian Rogers say one time. It was actually not in a sermon, but in a conversation, and he was saying this. He reported this or mentioned this in a sermon that I heard a recording of. Someone said, well, Dr. Rogers, what in the world? What is the world coming to? What is the world coming to? With such despair. And Dr. Rogers just laughed and he said, friend, the world is coming to Jesus. The world is coming to Jesus. I believe that there are going to be many, many people saved, many lives changed, many hearts touched. Things that you and I could not imagine having been done. There are people that are going to be a part of worship services, or listen to sermons, or listen to songs, or they're going to be open to testimony and to the gospel story, or some kind of Christian ministry during this time, who ordinarily wouldn't even give it a thought. God is meeting people's needs. He is touching people's hearts. We don't know everything that He's doing or exactly what He's doing, but I know that this is a time where God is blessing. Now, in 1 Kings chapter 17, I talked with you a little bit about one of my favorite stories last Sunday. Just another few minutes today. Elijah, the prophet Elijah. It was during the time when Ahab was the king of Israel. And here it says in chapter 17, verse 1 of 1 Kings, Elijah the Tishbite was of the inhabitants of Gilead. And he said to King Ahab, As the Lord God of Israel liveth, before whom I stand, there shall not be dew nor rain these years, but according to my word. The word of the Lord came to him, saying, God then spoke to Elijah directly and said, Get thee hence and turn thee eastward, and hide thyself by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And it shall be that you will drink of the brook, and I have commanded the ravens, the birds, I have commanded the ravens to feed thee there. So Elijah went and did according unto the word of the Lord, for he went and dwelt by the brook Cherith, that is before Jordan. And the ravens brought him bread and flesh in the morning, and bread and flesh in the evening, and he drank of the brook. Well, that's where I stopped last Sunday in this story. In the next verse it says, And it came to pass after a while that the brook dried up, because there had been no rain in the land. Now, sometimes things can go from bad to worse. As we say here in Alabama, sometimes things can go from being bad to being worse and worse yet. Here's a situation where there had not been any rain in a long time. I read that verse. It says, the brook dried up because there hadn't been any rain. And I read that and say, sure enough, that's the way, sure enough, you don't say, the brook dried up. Well, there he was, and I guess the birds could still brought him food, and it didn't say that they quit coming. And I imagine Elijah would say, I appreciate you bringing me something to eat. I ain't got nothing to wash it down with, though. I don't have nothing to make tea with. And I'm sure Elijah making some sweet tea out of that brook water there. But sometimes we can be in the midst of a trial, and we say, well, this is awful. Elijah could say, I'm here all by myself. And there's a drought. There's a drought, which caused a famine. Now, as we say here in Alabama, in all my put-togethers, I've never heard of any place, and it's not because maybe it hasn't happened, it's just in my hearing. In my life, I've never heard of a place in the world where they were in a drought for 3.5 years. Now, it doesn't say here how long. Elijah just tells King Ahab, until I say so. That's what God says. But it's going to last, we know, 3.5 years. It's not going to rain. And Elijah says, there's not even going to be any dew in the morning when you wake up. When you get up in the morning, there's not going to be any dew on the grass. There's not going to be any dew on your windshield of your car. There's not going to be any water. Now, I've heard of droughts and famines in various places all around the world, here even in our own country, the United States, at difficult times where crops have failed. But here was 3.5 years in the land of Israel, and they didn't even have they weren't driving any cars. They didn't have any industry. There were no plants. They weren't producing any CO2 except just that occasional accident. And then there were no fossil fuels being burned, anything like this. I'm sure that if there are the people of the modern news media or modern politicians lived back in Elijah's day, they would say, well, this is being caused by people and their automobiles, and this is being caused by global warming or climate change, where the planet is dying, and that's why it hasn't rained here in Israel for 3.5 years. Or people might say, obviously, this is King Ahab's fault. Or they might look and say, you know who Ahab thought was responsible? Later on, Jezebel puts out a hit on him because she said, yeah, I know who caused this drought. It was Elijah. And she said, Elijah, you're going to be dead by the end of the day. Scared Elijah to death. He wasn't scared of the king, but he was scared of Jezebel. And maybe that was the better part of valor, or the better part of wisdom. But, that was thousands of years ago. And there have been times, people will tell you today that the hurricanes we're seeing today are the worst hurricanes that has ever been in human history. Well, that's not true. The worst tornadoes, the worst earthquake, the most people died, or the most people had a disease, or there were more viruses today than there ever have been before. Well, all you have to do is crack a book or do a little bit of study, and you'll find out that one day in Israel, about 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, they had a drought that lasted for 3.5 years. And then, other than biblical sources as well, extra biblical accounts, other histories, you can read on steles and different carvings on walls where they had great droughts and famines, where plagues came in and thousands died. And even in the Middle Ages, where millions died from the Black Plague. Don't ever let anybody scare you by saying, oh, that's the worst war that's ever been, or we're all going to die, this is the worst disease, or this is we've never had any floods like this. You know, there was a fella, he was in the Jonestown flood. Have you ever heard about the Great Jonestown flood? Well, he lived through the Jonestown flood, and he survived it. And he became one of those fellows that every time you sit down next to him, he'd say, have I ever told you about the Jonestown flood? I survived the Jonestown flood. Well, his whole life, and one day he passed away. He lived a ripe old age and lived for many years, and he went to heaven. And he got to heaven. He was so glad to be coming to heaven. He walked in, and he was seeing all the people, began to greet family members that he'd already gone by. And then somebody slipped up to him and said, well, John, let me tell you something. He says, before you get started on your story, he said, I know you're still proud of it. You probably won't tell everybody in heaven, but I just want to remind you that Noah's here. So Noah's got a better flood story than the Jonestown flood. Oh, there have been worse floods. As a matter of fact, Noah can tell you about it. Well, there are always people trying to scare you to death. Don't let it happen. Don't listen to their lies. Yes, there are terrible times, and I heard this weekend that there was a tornado in Jonesboro, Arkansas, and we got some notes back by Facebook from some of our friends saying that they were okay. Michelle sent me a note and said, we're all right. We didn't get blown away. Well, that's good. And we might die in a tornado or flood. We might get Danny said there was a new song. Would you say, don't let the corona get on you? Is that it? All right, you need to look at it. I hadn't heard it myself. Don't let the corona get on you. And it's evidently on YouTube. So I hadn't heard it. I got to go hear that. It sounded like a good one. Don't let the corona get on you. Well, it might get on you. It might get on me. Now, I'm in that target group. When I hear them describe it, you know, I'm 64 years old. I've had a heart attack. I have congestive heart failure. I have breathing problems. And you see, my appearance has changed so much since the heart attack. You can see all this water in my face, and it seems like all the fluid in my body just hangs around underneath my eyes. And I guess if Mama was still around, she might not even recognize me anymore. I look like a different person. But when they start saying, you know, don't worry, it's only people like John Bain who are dying from the coronavirus. And it's like, oh, okay, that's okay. Well, I may get it. If I get it, I may survive. It may take me, but I may die in an automobile accident. I nearly died. For the longest time, every time I went to see my heart specialist at the heart center, he would say, you know, you almost died. And I said, yeah, you keep saying that. I said, I got it. And as a matter of fact, when I was in the ambulance on the way to the hospital, I was just hoping that I would pass out or die or something because I hurt so bad. Well, listen. God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. Maybe you need to, I know Daddy used to listen to CNN 24 hours a day. He used to get him in such a state. We couldn't talk politics with him at all, and he believed everything that CNN said, and I don't. I'm listening to less and less and less news. I'm turning the TV off more and more, and I'm reading more and listening to more music and reading the Bible and studying more. I'm giving news and a lot of the social media a break because it looks like what people are bound and determined. Now listen, this is very serious, and this is something not to, you know, we're not having church, and they're not having school, and you can't hardly go to the grocery store. And I'm talking to Ray McNutt yesterday, and he says, I'm getting tired of eating cornbread and pinto beans. And I don't know if those words ever left his mouth before. I'm getting tired of eating cornbread and pinto beans. I don't know if I've ever said that, but evidently he's his own cook, and he is pretty good. I know he's a good cook. And he said he was going to go to the store. He said, I'm going to put my long breeches on, I'm going to put my long sleeve shirt on, some gloves, and put a mask on, and I'm going to town. So, you know, if that's what you got to do. Governor says don't go outside, don't go near anybody. I'm telemarketing for NASA from home. And I don't know how many of my co-workers are working from home. One of my trainee who took my shift was working on a desktop, and this week I know our boss was getting him transferred over to a laptop where he could go home and work from home. Listen, this is all very serious. I'm not making light of it, but let me tell you what. If you go to the doctor one day and you sit down and the doctor examines you and does some testing and he brings you into his office, that's never a good sign in my experience. And your doctor's going to sit down into his desk on the other side of it, and you're sitting down there, and he says, I got some news for you. He said, you're going to die. And you just look back at your doctor and say, Doctor, am I paying you to tell me that I'm going to die? He said, I know I'm going to die. We're all going to die. I like that old Hank Williams song. I've sung it many times. Well, I'm never going to get out of this world alive. We're not. I'm never going to, my fishing pole's broke, my creek is full of sand, my woman's run away with another man. No matter how I struggle and strive, I'm never going to get out of this world alive. Well, we're all going to die. And look at the doctor and say, you're not? You're not going to die? Yeah, you're going to die. We're all going to die. I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid to die. Paul said, oh, grave, where's your victory? Oh, death, where's your sting? He said, no. He said, for me to live is Christ and to die is gain. He says, I'm kind of torn. I like it down here. The Lord's given me a good life. I'm torn between the two. But he says, I'd like to stay here with you Philippians there, he says in first chapter of Philippians. But he said, I'd kind of like to go on too. I'd like to go on. And we don't have any choice, I don't think, often, whether we're going to go or stay. But listen, don't be afraid. Don't let anybody panic you. Don't get worried. Trust the Lord. Trust the Lord. Now, Elijah here, there were some people that were going to blame the king. I'm sure a lot of people was mad at the king because of the drought. They were mad at God. And that's who they ought to have been mad at, because God is the one. Listen, you'll never find a storm that Danny sang about that was, it says, the devil made up a storm, or the devil sent a storm. A lot of people want to blame the king. A lot of people want to blame President Trump. He's in charge of everything. He's responsible for everything. And they'll say, I remember many years ago, I overheard a conversation. I probably shouldn't have been eavesdropping. A good friend of mine who was a Christian counselor, and he was comforting someone he was counseling, and I have the greatest respect for him, and I just disagreed with him on his advice here. He said, let me tell you something. This is the way to get through life. Everything that happens in your life that is good, every good thing, that's from God. And he says, whenever anything bad ever happens in your life, he said, that's from the devil. So don't get worried. He had a very simplistic worldview, and he was sharing that with one of his clients. If something good happens, then that was from God. And if something bad happens, that's from the devil. Well, listen, there's no great battle or struggle going on between God and the devil. It's not God here and then the devil, and there's great eternal struggle going on. No, the devil's way down here. The devil's done. The devil, he got done as far as God is concerned many eons ago. The devil stick a fork in the devil. He's finished. He is done. The devil is not, it's not God and the devil. You talk about there's a great struggle going on between light and darkness. The light or the good and the darkness are evil. Let me tell you what, we're in the room right now, and it might be take some work to do, but we could cover up the windows, we could close the door and turn off the light so it'll just be completely black dark in here, just dark. And we associate darkness with wickedness and evil. Just make it dark in here, dark. And then I'd send Andy over here, and all he had to do is turn on the light switch, and the lights would come on, just like they are right now. You know, there wouldn't be no as the light and the darkness struggled and battled, and as these two elemental forces in the world of light and darkness, there wouldn't be no and then suddenly light. No, you just turn the light on, boom, and the darkness is gone. There's no struggle, there's no battle. That ain't a fight. And it's the same thing about good and evil. There's no great battle, eternal struggle, or spiritual battle between good and evil in the world. We see it portrayed in Hollywood and in the books we read and in fiction. But good is so much more powerful and victorious. The only time evil ever prevails is when we coax it to, when we make it, when we choose it to. So, listen, There was a time when a man named Job was being beset by some tremendous, awful tragedies. And his wife came to him, Job's wife came and said, "You're having all these troubles. Do you still hold to your integrity? You still going to stick with God?" And Job looked at her and said, "Well, you sound like one of the foolish women." I've never met one of those. But anyway, he's about to get himself in trouble. You can tell by the way he started that sentence off. He says, "You just sound like one of the foolish." He says, "Shall we receive good at the hand of the Lord? And shall we not also receive evil?" And the word evil there doesn't mean wickedness or sinfulness, but he says good and bad, light and dark. It's all from the Lord. And listen, don't let anybody tell you that the kind of difficulties that we're having in our world today, that it's all from the devil. Don't give the devil any credit. Don't give the devil any glory. Whatever's happening right here in the story of Elijah, it is all God's doing. Now listen, it was awful. It was terrible. Can you imagine not raining, not even any dew on the ground for 3.5 years? It was people starving, and people starving to death, people dying. It was tragic. It was terrible. It was awful. Let me tell you something though, and I want to say it this way. God is always doing something that is more important than rain. He's always doing something that is more important than rain. He's doing something, God is always doing something that is more important than life itself, human life. It always involves human life. But listen, God is doing something that's more important than eating. It's more important than being healthy or well. It's more important than being wealthy or rich. God is doing something that is of eternal value that is more important. I remember to mention Dr. Rogers again, someone was talking to him during the great cataclysm among Southern Baptists when we were trying to figure out if we wanted to be conservative about our beliefs or very liberal. And someone said, "Well, Dr. Rogers, if we're not able to compromise on some of these issues," he says, "we're never, as Baptists, going to be able to get along. If we're not able to compromise on some of these key issues, we're never going to be able to get along." And Dr. Rogers looked right at him with all the sincerity of his heart, and he said, "We don't have to get along. We don't have to get along. I don't have to live. I can die. I don't have to get by. I don't have to eat. I don't have to have food. All those things can go away. There are things that are far more important than that." We need to understand, we need to have an eternal vision, an eternal scope. There are things, if the most important thing in your life is your life, Jesus said it this way. He said, if everything you do in your world is trying to save your life, what did Jesus say would happen?
You'll lose it.
Jesus said you'll lose it. If that's what you're trying to do, if that's what you're working on, if the most important thing to you is saving your life, Jesus said you're going to lose it. But he said if you give your life away, if you give your life up, if you'll just forget about that, he says you'll gain your life. You'll find out what true life is. Now that sounded ridiculous to a lot of people, but I'm telling you that it is the truth. What God is doing in our world right now, and he's doing it to the whole world, is he's shaking things up. And listen, it's not the devil doing this. This storm comes from the hand of God. The devil can't make it rain. The devil can't make the wind blow or the ground shake. He can't make the lightning fall from the sky. Jesus said when the disciples came back, the 70 came back from preaching, they were talking about, man, we were just telling people about the good news. And Jesus said, it just looked like I saw Satan falling from heaven as if he were a bolt of lightning. Well, that's right. Cheer up, you saints of God. There's nothing to worry about. Not really. Jesus said don't worry, don't fret. There's plenty to worry about. There's plenty to be concerned about. There's plenty to be afraid of. But the Bible just tells us, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't worry. Let it go. Trust God. And that's the message today. We're going to learn a little bit more about Elijah. We're going to talk with him a little bit more next Sunday. You come back and be with us next Sunday at 11 o'clock. But if there's anything that we or any of us who serve here at the Walnut Grove Baptist Church can do to assist you, to help you, to serve you, to encourage you, please you let us know. We'd be happy to do that. Thanks again to Andy. Thanks to Danny. And all those who've been tuning in today. So many people have tuned in. We love you all. And God bless you. He will. He is. He has.